MarketLink was first created in 2013 by the nonprofit and National Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Programs, NAFNMP, in response to a USDA grant opportunity. Since then, MarketLink has become a nationally recognized program that helps direct marketing farmers and farmers market increase sales and expand their customer base through SNAP, aka EBT or food stamps. In 2025, Farmers Food Assistance Bureau was established. So we became our own nonprofit and assumed operations of the MarketLink program, as well as acquired the total pay technology behind the processing of the SNAP that the SNAP equipment does. We currently oversee 2 grants, and for both grants, we have a cooperative agreement with USDA and FNS. Happy to talk more about these grants with anyone who's curious in participating, but for now, we just wanted to provide some context about the nonprofit as well as the MarketLink program and the grants which you may be eligible for. Lastly, we rolled out a couple new programs in the past year and a half. The first was Snap U, and based on feedback from that pilot, we developed the Newbie U series, and we're so glad that you can join us. And yeah, again, happy to chat more about any of these if anyone is interested, but let's keep it rolling. I know Lisa has a lot to cover. This is just a little bit about me for folks that I haven't met yet. I'm the program coordinator for SnapU and NewBeU. I'm passionate about food systems, ag production, and access to healthy food. I hope to cultivate NewBeU as an informative space and encourage you to participate in the chat and reach out if you have any questions. Also, if there's anything you want us to cover in this series that we haven't yet or aren't scheduled to cover, please share that in the chat. You can also always reach out to me. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Lisa, and thank you very much.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Brianna. Thank you for having me. My name is Lisa. I'm the Regional Specialist Manager for MarketLink. Our team is nationwide, so we have regional specialists throughout the country, but I focus on the Western and Southwest region. Yeah, thank you again for everyone for being here. I'm excited to share with you all my knowledge about SNAP. As we go along, feel free to post your questions in the chat and I'll answer them at the end. But I hope you all get a lot of helpful information about out of this. So to start us off, I'll be reviewing the SNAP program in general and some training resources that help you keep up to date with SNAP regulation requirements. So to start us off, a review of the SNAP program. SNAP stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So this means supplemental funding to help someone feed themselves and or their family. It was previously known as food stamps, so you might hear that name still, but more commonly, people refer to it as just EBT. Folks qualify based on income factors and household factors, meaning how much money they make and how many people are in their household. The actual amount a recipient can receive depends on their state. So usually folks would just need to go to their Health and Human Services office to see if they qualify. So what foods can folks purchase with SNAP? Fortunately, it's still open to a very wide variety. A pretty easy way to think of what SNAP can buy is any food that can be taken home to feed yourself or your family. So of course, this includes produce, breads, grains, pasta, meat, fish, dairy, eggs, and baked goods. But it also can include processed foods such as accessory foods such as jams, jellies, pickles, juice, frozen foods, and even plants and seeds that produce food. Some states are rolling out waivers with some restrictions to SNAP, but so far we've only seen restrictions to sugary drinks and candy. So we're hoping that this will not affect farms or farmers markets for hopefully ever. But what folks cannot buy in general is any non-food items and also any prepared foods in a hot or cold food that is intended to be eaten immediately. This is generally for restaurant foods. So there are some states with exceptions to accepting SNAP at restaurants, but in general, these foods are not allowed. So where can folks spend their benefits? They can spend them at any SNAP authorized retailer, which of course can include farms and farmers markets. So we'll now get into how that looks on the retailer side in terms of where and when a business can accept SNAP, depending on if they are a farm or a farmer's market. So farmers markets are limited to accepting SNAP at one location during the business hours that they are open. They also need to implement a distribution and redemption model to administer the SNAP benefits. Direct marketing farmers, however, are not limited to one location, excuse me, and are able to accept SNAP wherever they sell at. So they can accept SNAP at their farm stand, or if they go to local farmers markets, they can also do a CSA or even accept SNAP through delivery. So as I just mentioned, farmers can accept SNAP through a CSA. So I'll now touch on a couple SNAP regulations related to CSAs. So typically CSA are paid for the entire season upfront, and then the box is delivered or picked up each week. But unfortunately, SNAP does not allow the future sales of SNAP payments, meaning you cannot pay for any products in advance. But they have allowed an exception for CSAs where they can accept SNAP up to 2 weeks as long as the customer comes in person. So what this looks like is a customer would come every 2 weeks to pay for their CSA box in person, and then they can pick up or deliver the following week, just like normal. Sometimes farmers have them provide their credit card info to save for the whole season, or sign a contract committing to the whole season. But they found different ways to make it work. And with a loyal customer base and clear communication, usually it can work out great for SNAP customers. So we've touched on a couple examples of regulations at farms and farmers markets, but to review all the regulations on the SNAP program, we'll next be getting into the training resources available. So the first main one is the one that comes directly from the USDA. When a business is first SNAP approved, they will send a packet in the mail with all the rules and regulations about the program. But if it's been a while since you've been approved, you're not sure where that is, these are also available online on the USDA website with additional training videos and resources on how to use the SNAP program. They also have a specific page that's specifically about training your staff and employees, with, again, some helpful resources, but also includes the training expectations that the USDA expects a SNAP retailer to adhere to. So for example, they require that all staff are trained within 30 days of being SNAP approved and to have a refresh training once per year. So here's one example of a resource available on the USDA website, a poster with helpful reminders for SNAP recipients of what they can buy with their benefits and what they cannot buy with their benefits. And then here's another example of some specific examples of running a SNAP transaction for your folks accepting the payments. In addition to USDA resources, there are also lots of helpful resources created by other nonprofits. The USDA resources, unfortunately, don't always cover all the nuances to farms and farmers markets, but luckily these nonprofits have created guides that go into more detail. I've listed them here on the slide, but of course we can send the direct links in a follow-up email after this webinar. So the first one I have listed here is the Farmers Market Coalition Guide for farmers markets that specifically has helpful tips on training vendors. They also have a listserv where you can ask your fellow community members questions and get tips on running the SNAP program. Next, we have the Ecology Center's SNAP EBT Simple Guide. This guide also includes helpful tips and templates on training vendors, but it also has information on the token and script system and redemption models for farms and farmers markets and some tips on how to implement that. Next, we have a wonderful resource called the Farmers Market Legal Toolkit that goes deeper into the actual laws and like what would happen if you were sent a warning. But it also has a really helpful page on specifically SNAP at CSAs. So if you run a CSA and you accept SNAP, that's a great place to start. And then lastly, we have the Nutrition Incentive Hub, which is helpful for anyone running a matching or incentive program and wants help with how to make sure they're following all the regulations with SNAP and incentive programs. All right, so our next main topic today is maintaining your SNAP authorization, where again, I will share some overall tips and then cover the SNAP reauthorization process. So starting with some just general tips. These are some documents and information that is helpful to save during the application process. So when you're first applying for SNAP, or if you're already approved, to go back and try to locate them to make sure you have them on file, as these are helpful to maintain your SNAP authorization. So we highly recommend saving a copy of your original application, the email stating that you're approved, and more importantly, the contact information of the person who approved you. These folks are called program specialists. They are USDA employees. So hopefully you still have that person's contact information. And then lastly, a copy of your SNAP permit in both a physical and digital copy. The physical copy is helpful to have, as we also recommend you have a copy with your farmers market information booth, just like on hand at the market. Doesn't need to be posted publicly, or to have just in your, if you're a farmer, to have in your file somewhere. And so for reference, here's what a SNAP permit looks like. And then also just want to quickly note the other helpful information you can find on here. So your FNS number is on here. It has your responsible official. So this is the person who was originally listed on the application and is the person who can communicate with the USDA on behalf of the business. And then it also has your location address and your mailing address. And also the date you were approved, which will be relevant when we get to reauthorization. So if you're unsure where your SNAP permit is, you can request a new one from the USDA. To get a new one, the responsible official, so the person that I just mentioned who can communicate on behalf of the on behalf of the business with the USDA, can call the SNAP Retailer Service Center to request a new one. And they will mail it out. Our next tip on maintaining authorization is to make sure you keep all your information up to date with the USDA. So not only is this helpful if they need to contact you, but it also does keep you compliant with SNAP regulations. So similar to requesting a new permit, the responsible official is the one who can call the USDA to update your information. So they are able to call and update your mailing address and contact information, so your email or your phone number. However, if your farm or market changes locations, you will also need to notify the USDA. And this is sometimes a case where you can just call to update it. However, they sometimes will say you need to reapply. This can often depend on how far you're moving, and whether or not you're a nonprofit or a non-nonprofit, not a nonprofit. If they do insist you need to reapply, unfortunately, you will lose your SNAP authorization while going through reapplying. So if you do need to do this, we recommend doing it during your slower season or off season if possible. If you're a farmer's market and you're year-round, just make sure you give your SNAP customers a heads up. This is also a case where it's helpful for farmers markets to encourage their vendors to also be individually authorized, or at least know of the ones that are. So in the case the farmers market has a pause in authorization, they can send them to at least some of the vendors that are SNAP approved. If you do need to reapply, we also recommend putting your FNS number in the comment section on the application. It sometimes can help things go a little smoother, saying that you were previously approved and are just moving. On that note, you also will need to update your information if your responsible official changes. Again, this can depend on your ownership type. Typically, the USDA is more lenient on nonprofits. And if the current responsible official is still with the organization. So if they are still with the organization, the current responsible official can call the USDA to add an additional responsible official, and have the new person kind of take over from there. This is also a case where it's helpful to have the information of the person who originally approved you, as you can try reaching out to them first to update your information rather than needing to sit on hold with the retail service center for a long time. But if you do call the SNAP Retailer Service Center, another helpful tip is to ask for a call back from a supervisor instead of working with the agents who answer the phone, as they can sometimes update your information. But this is also a case where they say you may need to reapply. And you also will always need to reapply if no responsible officials are available. If they've left the organization, as the USDA will only communicate with the responsible officials listed on the SNAP authorization. All right. So our next topic on maintaining SNAP authorization is the official process of reauthorizing your SNAP permit. So once you're SNAP approved, your authorization is usually good for up to 5 years. And so around after 5 years, the USDA will contact you at the contact information listed on your original application with instructions on how to reauthorize. So again, this is a case where keeping your contact information up to date is very important, as you really do not want to miss this reauthorization notice. So as I mentioned, they will contact you at the contact information they have on file with instructions on how to reauthorize. They will usually send a letter first to the mailing address listed on that they have on file, but they will also usually send an email as a follow-up. This email and letter will include a link and a login to access the USDA reauthorization website. They give you 30 days to respond, which again is why it's helpful to keep that up to date, because it's really a short window and you don't want to miss it. But from there, if you got the letter or email, you will use that information to log in, follow the prompts on the reauthorization website, and update or confirm the information they have on file. After you send it in, the USDA will assign it to a program specialist who will review your application and handle your reauthorization. From there, they may request additional information or request a site visit, which I will cover in just a little bit. But once everything is submitted and completed, your program specialist will renew your authorization and you will get a notice that it's complete. However, we also recommend following up with them at least once per week until they confirm that you are reauthorized. You could also try calling the SNAP Retailer Service Center as a backup to confirm that your authorization is moving along or has gotten approved as well. So good news for reauthorization, though. Unlike when you need to reapply completely, when you're going through the reauthorization process, your SNAP permit or your SNAP authorization will not lapse. It should still be active while you are going through the reauthorization process, and you will not experience a lapse in coverage. However, we still recommend saving all correspondence that you have with the USDA during the reauthorization process. In case you need to reach out for us for help, it's really helpful for us to have a paper trail so we can escalate things as needed from there. So as I mentioned, all of this is important to keep up with, because if you miss anything or miss requested information on the reauthorization, the USDA does have the right to withdraw your SNAP authorization and you would need to reapply completely from scratch. But if this happens, again, similar to when you're reapplying, we recommend it. We recommend that you put your old FNS number and say you are reapplying because you missed reauthorization, and sometimes this can help things go smoother. All right, so our last topic today will be covering site visits, when and where they happen, as well as going into some tips on how to help them go smoothly. So to start us off, what is a site visit? Some of you may have heard of these or experienced them, but for everyone here, a site visit is an in-person inspection done by a USDA contracted representative from a company called Manhattan Strategy Group. The purpose of these visits is to verify that your business meets the requirements to participate in the SNAP program. It's also important to note that these are separate from random secret shopper audits that the USDA also holds the right to perform. But when do these happen? So these can happen at various times, depending on if you run a farm or a farmer's market. The first time these happen is during your initial SNAP authorization, so when you're initially applying to accept SNAP. If you are a farmer, these are less common during the SNAP authorization process, but we've noticed a pattern where it's more common if you run a unique farming type. such as a hydroponic farm, a microgreen farm, or a mushroom farm. If you run a farmer's market, these unfortunately have become more common and are happening more often during the SNAP authorization process. These also can happen during the reauthorization process that I just reviewed, but again, more commonly for farmers markets. And then lastly, we've been hearing from a lot of folks that these are just happen randomly, also only at farmers markets. But this again goes back to making sure that your information is all up to date with the USDA. Because if they were to try to perform one and you weren't there, you would want to make sure that you could follow up to reschedule it. Which is a good segue into how do these happen and how are businesses notified? Again, this depends on if you're a farm or a farmer's market and at what stage you're at. So going back to, again, during initial SNAP authorization, when you're first applying, the USDA will notify you, whether you're a farm or farmer's market, they will notify you that all your documents have been received and that everything is complete on their end, and they will now review your application and may order a site visit. So after you get this email, this is when a site visit may happen. Again, these are less common for farms, but if they were to order one for a farm, the representative will show up to the farm address listed on the application during the business hours listed on the application. This, of course, is incredibly frustrating, as we have been told to list all the hours a farmer will be available, including the times they are at a farm or farmer's market, which is how their authorization covers them. As we discussed in the beginning, they can sell anywhere. So sometimes a site visit may happen when a farmer is at a farmer's market. If this happens, they will just leave you a notice that they attempted to do a site visit. And then from there, you can call them directly, or you can call your program specialist to reschedule. So good news is typically you can reschedule if you were to miss them. But if these happen for farmers markets, usually it's a lot easier because, again, they show up to the farmers market address during the hours that are open. And since a farmers market operates more like a retail store, fortunately, you shouldn't miss those during the SNAP authorization process. If you're going through reauthorization for a farmer's market, it works the same way. They will show up during the business hours when the market is open. But we have yet to hear about a farmer going through reauthorization, so we're hoping that stays the same. But typically, they also would not announce, and you would need to reschedule. And then, as we discussed briefly, there have also just been random visits to farmers markets, and unfortunately, there is no announcement for these. But that all being said, we can hopefully at least prepare you for if these were to happen. So we'll now get into what actually happens during a site visit. So as I mentioned, a representative from Manhattan Strategy Group will visit the farm or market. They will have a letter from the USDA, pictured here on the right hand of the slide, announcing their visit, and they will have to have a representative from the business give consent and sign for them to conduct the visit, where you will also list your FNS number. Once that's signed, they will continue and take a tour of the farm or farmer's market. They will take notes and take photos. So the purpose of the tour is to verify your inventory and ensure you meet the stocking requirements to participate in the SNAP program. I will cover the stocking requirements more in detail in the next slide. But other than that, they will also reviewing your signage to ensure you have the SNAP fraud poster posted, which I'll show an example of in just a bit as well. They may also ask about your training materials and how you keep your staff trained on the training program, going back to the training resources we shared earlier. And then lastly, if you're a farmer's market, they may ask you questions about how you run your SNAP program, meaning if you use tokens or script, and how which redemption model you use, meaning like how you pay back your vendors. During the visit, you also have the right to take your own notes and gather the inspector's contact information. So as promised, we're going to just briefly touch on the stocking requirements to participate in the SNAP program. So stocking requirements refer to the inventory needed to be sold by the farm or farmer's market to participate in the SNAP program. Basically, they're reviewing if you sell enough staple foods to participate in the program. We touched, oh, sorry. We touched on what SNAP customers can buy earlier, but this is more about the staple foods to participate in the SNAP program. So staple foods are specific types of food. They are fruits and vegetables, meat, poultry, fish, and eggs, dairy products, and bread, grains, and cereals. And the business can meet these requirements by either falling into criteria A or criteria B. So currently, to meet criteria A, you need to sell at least 3 varieties of stocking units in each of the 4 staple food categories. So again, produce, meat, dairy, and grains. And a variety means a broad type of food that is sold. So for example, apples is a variety, but Fuji, Granny Smith, Pink Lady are not. Those are just, I know it's confusing because they are technically varieties available. And as far as this is concerned, they all just count as apple. A stocking unit just means how an item is sold. So if it's a bunch, a bag, by the pound, a box, etc. And then, as I'm sure many of you have heard, the USDA announced that they will be updating this criteria to be 7 varieties to, oh, sorry, from 3 varieties to 7 varieties in each category, which will go into effect of fall of this year. We, of course, are staying up to date with this. We're doing our best to follow along with the updates. But I wanted to include this slide to hopefully ease some of the worry you may be feeling, because the good news is this likely will not affect farms or farmers markets, as they will still likely qualify in criteria B. So criteria B is the second way a business can qualify. This is not going anywhere. This criteria is more about sales. And to qualify, you simply need to have more than 50% of your retail sales come from any of the staple food categories. So direct marketing farmers usually meet this no problem because they sell mostly produce. So more than 50% of their sales comes from produce, which is a staple food. Farmers markets also often meet this or qualify this way. If they have enough produce or enough vendors overall selling staple food, they should be okay. So again, as far as we know, this is not changing. This is why you'll notice that some of the memos about the stocking requirements updates say that specialty stores and farm stands will be exempt. That is because they often qualify under this category. Bringing us back to our site visits discussion. After the site visit is complete, you will not receive a notification that you passed or anything. But that being said, this is definitely like a no news is good news situation. The only reason they would follow up directly after a site visit is if they had reason to. So if you're going through reauthorization or you got a random visit and you didn't get any notification, that's usually a good sign. However, if you're going through the SNAP authorization process, the initial authorization, a follow-up you may receive is your approval, as this is usually the last step in the review process. So hopefully your approval comes shortly after. So to end this section, here's some recommendations to make sure you are prepared for a site visit. As mentioned, if it's reauthorization or a random visit, it's good to have a copy of your SNAP permit on hand. And you also want to make sure that you have the SNAP fraud poster that I mentioned earlier. This legally does need to be posted. So here's what it looks like. This is also available for download on the USDA website. This is also where you can find the do's and don'ts for SNAP transactions and the using SNAP benefits poster that I shared earlier. And then lastly, of course, you want to make sure all of your staff is trained on the program. Not only is this helpful for site visits, but it's also helpful for the random secret shopper audits that I mentioned earlier, which is separate from a site visit. So a random secret shopper audit is when they send out someone who will attempt to buy non-SNAP items with a SNAP card. Again, this is more common at retail stores, but as things are rapidly changing, it's possible that they could start doing these at farmers markets. So just making sure all your staff is trained and prepared, you should be okay. All right, so wrapping up, I'm going to end my presentation with just a review of all the resources we shared today. In addition to the ones that I mentioned, we also have some in the works in-house. So we are working on finalizing our own site visits overview guide. that has a lot of the information I shared today, as well as a reauthorization guide that also has most of the information I shared today. So keep an eye out for those. Those will be coming in an upcoming newsletter. And that is it for me. So we looks like we have plenty of time for questions,
Yeah,
but I'll
you
leave
covered
my
a ton. Thank you so much, Lisa. This is super dense and full of information, and I'm happy to provide these slides as well as those resources to folks because it was definitely a lot to digest. But luckily, also we have the recording, so if you need to listen to it again too, that will also be an option.